here is the word of the Lord from Matthew 11, 25, 30. A text that is one of the few times in the gospel where we catch Jesus in an ecstatic frame of mind. So it would be helpful to notice what catapults him into this extraordinary leap of sheer delight and joy. It goes like this. On one occasion, Jesus spoke in this way. Father, Lord of heaven and earth, to you I offer praise. For what you have hidden from the learned and the clever, you have revealed to the merest children. Father, it is so true. You have graciously willed it to be so. Everything has been given over to me by my Father. No one knows the Son but the Father. And no one knows the Father but the Son. And anyone to whom the Son wishes to reveal him. In another place, Jesus says, unless you become like little children through conversion, you will not be able to enter the kingdom of heaven. That is to say, the kingdom of perfect love. So our poor selves have to be left outside. But what is so attractive in a mere child for the Father? Well, see if you can remember what it was like when you took your first walk. Sometimes you see a little tot in an airport and he gets a burst of energy and you see it rushing down the hall, totally unbalanced, and finally it has a crash. But it's as if God then, the Father, is in our spiritual journey or our human evolution is inviting us so tenderly, so lovingly, to keep going, to start walking. And although walking is a little hard on undeveloped muscles, it's so thrilling to be able to move. And so the Father is saying, come on. And so the little infant will take a few steps and then down it goes. Gives up. Few more steps, down it goes. You've seen this so many times. But this is exactly what's going on in our spiritual life, which is a bit helpless too. We don't have too many spiritual muscles. And so we're constantly being invited not to give up trying, to keep. And so our falling down certainly doesn't bother God. Perhaps he finds it entertaining, like I do in an airport, or fun to see this little creature accomplishing something so extraordinary as being able to walk on its 2 feet. After all, it took 13 or so billion years for humans or any creature to be able to do so. So falling down is part of the game. It requires some skill. As I enter into my second childhood and experience falling down at regular intervals, such that I find myself on the floor at the bottom of the stairs without knowing how I got there. It's just, whoosh, there's no choice. Down I go. But I'm learning how to exercise a certain skill in the way I fall, even when it's nose first. So I sympathize with the youngster. It's so sweet to see how it keeps trying and trying, and somebody is urging it on, sometimes a member of the family. But in our case, this is such a beautiful image. God isn't nearly as interested in our bright lights as in our acceptance of our littleness or helplessness or powerlessness. So feeling unequal to a situation is not a disaster. It's the normal process of growing up. And in the case of the spiritual journey, it's not so much us who grow up, is it? It's rather the Spirit of God growing up in us, or we growing up into the Spirit growing in us. And here's the rest of that passage that is perhaps so apropos in the recent disasters and the whole terrorist situation. Jesus goes on to say in the same place, apparently, "Come to me, all you who are weary and find life burdensome, and I will refresh you. Take my yoke upon your shoulders and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble of heart." We heard from Paul that Jesus, or that people who love a lot, don't get angry. No doubt they have angry feelings, but they don't last very long. So love is not quick to be angry. It takes pretty serious reason. Even then, it doesn't last long. So all the emotions that go with anger are not in love. They're not in Christ. And hence, we need to let these go. This image is very delightful. Take my yoke upon you. The yoke, of course, is the instrument that joins together a ox with the cart, and sometimes there's a double yoke that which reminds us of what spiritual companioning is. That we are shouldering the same burden that the other ox next to us is bearing, which happens, the other ox being, of course, Jesus, who is bearing our burdens, hence bearing the yoke. Now, in Jesus' time, remember, he was apprenticed to his father, Joseph, probably, who was a carpenter, so much so that he was identified as the carpenter's son, as you remember. Well, he may have helped build that significant town a couple of miles from Jerusalem that was a Greek city, a center of trade. It had a theater eventually, and it was being built during Jesus' lifetime or early days. And that's where he probably got the term hypocrite, which really means, hypocrite, an actor. So a hypocrite is someone who's a good actor. Not on the stage, but unfortunately in daily life. So the yoke then is that skill that is not done on an assembly line, but was handmade, in which each wrinkle in the ox's back was fitted to the particular yoke. So it was a marvelous skill required, so that the ox had the least amount of friction or difficulty in carrying the load. So that's the image, that the yoke that Jesus asks us to carry, he's carrying half of it to begin with, and secondly, every part of the yoke fits perfectly, so you won't get any blisters of any serious kind. That won't be too uncomfortable. But it remains a yoke. It's something to be carried. So God can't take away the difficulties of everyday life without changing the whole scheme of creation involving a certain freedom. So every creature is following its own nature, and the very complex creatures we are following some aspect of our nature most of the time, and they collide and they have other difficulties. But the response to the difficulties is, of course, trust, the help that we're receiving, and gentleness and humility of heart. Jesus then says, your souls will find rest if you learn from me. For my yoke is sweet. Text here says easy, but other translations that are closer to the original, by sweet means it's well-fitting. So Jesus is claiming that his yoke has been marvelously crafted, so that it fits just who we are at every point, no matter what we think about it. It's just right. And even when it's just right, it's still cut in half by our beloved companion who is walking beside us, not ahead, not behind, but beside, which is what companionship signifies. Closeness. And my burden, he concludes, is light. That's hard to accept when the burden, in fact, is virtually unbearable. But then we just heard that love endures all things. As Augustine says somewhere, love, I can't remember the exact quote, but it does, love not only bears all things, but if they're painful, it loves it, or if it's a big labor. Anyway, so love never fails, it endures all things. And perhaps that's why some of you who've been through so much in recent weeks in the way of concern and tragedy for your homes and your relatives and this friends in this afflicted part of the world are very close to God, and it's this love that enables you to bear this with some kind of peace. And one final thought to conclude this little reflection. I've discovered a new meaning. The trouble with every document is you're always thinking how it could be improved, except maybe the Constitution of the United States. Well, anyway, the text that we use, as you know, for the description or the basis for centering prayer is Matthew 6:6, which goes, if you want to pray, enter your inner room, close the door, and pray to your Father in secret. Prayer in secret is probably Jesus' term for that experience that later became known in Christian tradition as contemplative prayer. So the movement of our centering prayer is to silence, and then beyond silence, and then beyond that silence, and then beyond that silence. So it's always getting more silence, and as we become more silent, the silence becomes more radiant, penetrated with a certain luminosity, as the Greek fathers called it, but it means a certain pervasive, undifferentiated presence of something that is not a thing, but of reality that engulfs us with a sweetness that is very well fitting. It's like coming home to a place that you never should have left. Well, the end of that is prayer in secret. Your Father who is in secret will reward you. Now, I've always been uncomfortable with that last phrase. I don't think someone who's in prayer in secret is thinking about any reward. If they are, it's very far back in their mind. The present is so fulfilling. You can't imagine anything else or anything desirable. But I'm so delighted that one of our members has researched the Aramaic Bible. Mike Potter is his name, and he kindly sent me a copy of it. Now, the Aramaic is still spoken in a few small villages in the Near East, and it doesn't quite mean your Father will reward you. It seems to mean, according to because Aramaic was the language Jesus spoke, and maybe these have changed a little, but not much. Here's what it means in that text, which is the language Jesus actually spoke. And pray to your Father in secret, and your whole being will blossom and flourish. That captures what prayer in secret unpacks. The whole beauty and joy of the image of God within us, the sense of closeness to God that enables all our fears to be laid on one side, or at least when you're in terribly fearful situations, they don't reach to that place. And hence, when that subsides a little, all the difficulties dissipate like clouds in the sunshine. And so it captures, I think, what prayer in secret allows to happen, which is the release of the fruits and gifts of the Spirit given us in baptism or through grace, so that the theological virtues, faith, hope, and charity, begin to grow fast. And then the fruits of the Spirit perfect the theological virtues. And then the Beatitudes, which are the result of the gifts of the Spirit, enhance even that level of participation in the divine life through Christ's resurrection. So everything in us, wonderful word, blossoms, and or flourishes, if you prefer that. So hence this is a marvelous encouragement, very specific to us in our centering prayer practice. The silence of self, the silence of our thoughts, the silence of our desires, the silence of our expectations, the ever deeper silence of just being in the presence of God, releases the perfume, so to speak, spiritual perfumes of the divine presence. And so the Spirit breathes through our little interior garden and sets all the perfumes floating into the air. And so everything blossoms. And so now you can see why Paul lists all those wonderful things about love. That's what blossoming is. Love begins to express itself in all those ways that we heard a moment ago in 1 Corinthians 13. And so as we come to the end of our annual meeting and the retreat atmosphere in which it was done, my deepest prayer is that you all might blossom